Um, uh, can you hear me? I'm sorry. So my goal is to empower the citizens of Rochester, give them a voice, and we will see a reduction in violent crimes. Any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Deputy Chief. If you can briefly, I just would like to know, by the way, I'm Andre, I'm with City Councilman Willie Lightfoot, and I'm also the lead assistant for the Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition.
Sure.
And I wanted to ask you what maybe one or two examples of the type of community engagement that you guys were involved in.
Okay, so the best example I could give you, the county that I work in is the population is 4 times the size of Rochester. 2 miles to the east of the county that I work in is New York City, and we often receive spillage from New York City. West of that county is the city of Newark, New Jersey, who has their own problems. We average about 15 homicides a year. I'm talking about a population over 1 million. Average 15 homicides a year. And it's not because that we had the best detectives in the state of New Jersey. It's not because of Keith Stith, because we empower our citizens. We changed the culture in our community. When we had 1 homicide, the community was upset. It was an uprise for 1 homicide. So we changed that culture. And again, I contribute that, the homicide solve rate was for gang homicide, 90%. For regular homicides was about 85%, all right? And that's because the citizens of our community were engaged. We empowered them. We gave them a voice, and they participated in the process.
Sir, my name is John Lightfoot, and I also want to reiterate what you're saying about empowering our community. Under old Mayor Johnson, he began that empowerment of folks, and but there still is a tendency to want to be quiet. You know, I don't like to talk about a lot of things, but you know, there was a homicide, and then you know, I've done it a couple of times. It was successful just once or twice, knocking on doors as a representative to say, hey, speak to me, or encourage you to speak to the police. And homicides got solved that way. So what you're saying is correct, but you know, where is the place that you know, people can't knock on doors all day, right?
Right.
You know, who do they trust? So where is that link? Where is that link to say, hey, I'm empowered, I'm not afraid, I want to share? How does that happen? I think that's where we are.
Right. So 2 things need to happen. Before community engagement, before I ask you to be my partner, before you start before I earn your trust, there's something called community repair, right? We got to go in and mend this trust in some of these communities in Rochester. That's the first thing you have to do. The work is not easy. The work is not easy, but that's the first thing need to happen, community repair. The last month or so, I had the pleasure of working with Captain Mark Mara. And I don't know, Mark, we've been to a lot of meetings and a lot of Zoom calls. And so we got to work on community repair first before I ask you to be my partner, right?
Is there any additional questions for Deputy Chief Stith?
It sounds good. The community repair has been trying to happen here for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. You know, the officers are in the neighborhood service centers. They are being friendly, you know, for the you know, and they're trying.
Right.
But it seems like almost has not been successful as we would like to see it. You know, I know I have changed, but and you can hear stories where people have thanked the officers because they were just out of control. But it's not moving fast. It's not moving fast enough. You're 100% right, I believe, on that community repair. But we've been on it, I think, for 5 or 6 years, and we haven't gotten to the place where link where people can call and feel safe and are willing to do so. That's what I'm saying. You know, it's a tough thing. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not easy. It's going to take time. We saw a turnaround. We started our initiatives in 2010. We was getting 75, 80, 85 homicides. And the light bulb came on our head and said, listen, we got to engage in our community. We got to give our citizens an opportunity to tell us how to police their community. When we swallow our pride as a law enforcement agency and change our law enforcement philosophy, the numbers are public. We just did a complete turnaround. I think this year they have 16 homicides this year.
I think you said a key word though, when you said, hey, I'm gonna ask my community how to police them.
Absolutely.
I think that right there is a very essential key piece, because each neighborhood is different. You know, we broke our place up into 4 quadrants, blah, 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 blah. You know, so everything is going to be a little bit different. But how do we police now? We get that information from, I believe, our neighborhood organizations, right? That are there, who have been empowered, just like you said, even though things have kind of philosophies are getting murky now. I think what you said though, that was a key thing. And I'm glad I asked the questions. You kept talking because you said it. Ask them how to police my neighborhood. You see, what do I need? And it's not the same thing all across the city. Right. I think you're on the right point. Thank you.
No problem. Excellent point. You're right. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I also have Karen Emerson who had a question. She put in the chat. Karen, if you'd like to ask your question.
One of the big problems that we have is with retaliation. And why would anybody come forward if we see the direct line between someone thinking or knowing that someone said something and then their house is shot up or they're assaulted or worse?
Excellent question. So this is where New York is quite different from New Jersey. So let me just preface this by saying that what I did in New Jersey, I don't know if it would work in Rochester, right? Different community, different dynamics, okay? In terms of your question, Karen, our discovery law is a little different in New Jersey, okay? But again, the citizens were empowered. And they spoke out against crime as a group. So we didn't have a bunch. I will go on record and say it was rare that we have retaliatory shootings at my old agency. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. So again, every city's different. You know, the dynamics is different in every city. So I don't know if what I did in New Jersey will work here in Rochester, but I promise you, I'm gonna try. I'm going to be innovative. I'm going to take chances. I'm going to think big. I'm not afraid to fail.
All right. Can I say something? I'm sorry.
Hold on, John. Can you hold your question? I have somebody that's up after you. If you could put it in the chat, I'd appreciate that. I have Lisa Reagan who has a question.
Let me try. All right.
I'm happy to follow Councilmember Lightfoot. Because my question might go in a different direction.
Okay, go ahead, John.
I ain't the compliment anymore. I don't used to be. That's what I was going to say. And thank you so much. One that we was doing before I was gone is that the training of the police officers. One of the things, it's not okay. We're talking about mental health. I'm all over the place a little bit, but mental health is one thing. So when they approach a person, they have to be safe, but the aggressiveness can trigger more stuff when their people are home. People are home in their house. They could be under the influence because they're home. You know, other officers, they get done from work, they go home. So they police our neighborhoods. But what I've learned, this is the point I'm seeing, is that when I call, it was more of the place was you had to tell them, you had to tell the officer, don't come to my house. That was the thing, right? So in my neighborhood, oh, I'm going to report a crime, but then they come to your house and say, hey, well, you got, is everything okay now? And so that was a wrong thing. That's why people are scared, because that philosophy was the wrong philosophy.
Mhm.
If I'm calling the police for help in my neighborhood because I see a crime, don't come to my house. But that was a default, and that policy never changed. And so I think that, still needs to happen, in my opinion. And I'll be
Right.
quiet. Thank you.
So yeah, you shouldn't do it that way. I agree with you, but there is alternative ways to cooperate with the police. We'll figure that out, but it won't be the way that you just mentioned.
Okay, Ms. Reagan, if you have, after Ms. Reagan, I have Assemblyman Meeks. And then we're probably gonna have to close because we have our next guest of honor available. I would suggest if you have additional questions for Deputy Chief, please put it in the chat and we will get it to him.
So with regard to the trust building that you were discussing, I'm wondering how your police department was structured where you were. Obviously, it was a much larger population, but was there an opportunity for the people in a neighborhood to get to know the specific officers that were in that neighborhood, or were people dispatched on a general basis so that you didn't necessarily know who was in the neighborhood?
So the way we were structured in New Jersey is much different from New York. Real quickly, in the state of New Jersey, the chief law enforcement officer of each county is the prosecutor's office, and that's who I work for. As the chief of detectives, I had oversight over 12 municipal police departments. They was under my command. So we engaged in all 12 municipalities. I wasn't responsible for one city. I was responsible for a whole county. My message, my philosophy didn't change. John is right. Each community was different. So the technique we used to earn their trust was different. And we had a lot of success. I can't be any more simpler than that. It worked. It worked. And I think it will work here in the city of Rochester. I'm going to leave with this. When we met as a group, it was structured. I didn't want to run the meeting. The citizens should run the meeting, not the law enforcement officer. You were my equal. I just came there to make sure to share crime data information with you, but the citizens ran the meeting. When the citizens had input, I didn't dismiss it. We would, take a look at it. If it worked, it worked. Just that simple. But again, it's empower the people. It's making sure that law enforcement is a shared responsibility. It's mutual accountability. So that's what I'm going to drive. We need to change the culture in our communities. Once again, I think big. I'm not afraid to fail. And I think we could make this work in the city of Rochester.
The next Assemblyman Meeks, did he log off? Oh, here he is. He got kicked off. So I would leave the last question for Assemblyman Meeks. Assemblyman Meeks, are you back on?
I'm back.
Okay.
Body Wi-Fi. All right. Yes.
You have the floor.
I guess I was gonna. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
All right, great. No, I was just going to piggyback on what John Lightfoot stated, and I think that was valid. I received a number of calls to my office about those type of complaints where individuals in the community will call 911, and it also goes back to what Karen was stating about retaliation. In order for a person to retaliate, they have to know certain information. So if they see a law enforcement officer come to a neighbor's house when they know that there been a disturbance, then they may possibly look onto that neighbor as potentially telling on them. So one of the things that we sent out from our office, and I can get you a copy of this, Keith, but this is a form in which individuals can fill out the form, and it's a drug crime activity tip sheet. It gives the date, address, suspects, like name of suspects if you know them, time of day, and so on and so forth. And we have the address to the public safety building where individuals can mail this information anonymously. And we did this in an effort to push back against those type of practices with people complaining about issues in their community. And it also empowers the individual to be active and share information that they're aware of. So I can get that information to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Meeks. Now,
Thank you.
as a point of privilege, I'll have the final question for Deputy Chief. I often get from constituents in my neighborhood, when they think of community policing, they think of boots on the ground. Will we see any of the real boots on the ground in our neighborhoods like we see in other neighborhoods? And even in New York City and other cities, we see boots on the ground, but in our neighborhoods, we don't see a whole lot of that here in the South District.
So Ms. Harris, I'm going to answer that this way. And Mark, you could jump in if you want. Rochester PD has a man problem issue. Mark, you feel free. My goal is, yes, to my vision of community policing is yours, to have boots on the ground. I don't know when we're going to get there, but that's the vision of mine as well.
Chief, if you want, I could help out a little bit, I think.
Okay. Yes.
So, Councilman Harris, for that particular question, I don't think it's any surprise. It's not a surprise to anybody on this call or anybody in our community. Everybody's been basically made well aware of the fact that we're very short-staffed right now. I think in a perfect world, community engagement and officers interacting with the community, I agree 100%. Boots on the ground, officers walking up and down streets, getting to know. Chief Stith and I were just talking about this yesterday, actually getting to know members of the family right there on the streets, walking up and shaking hands with somebody across the fence and actually getting to know the people that are in the community that we serve. And, the sooner we can get back to our staffing levels to where we can actually hopefully bolster our Community Affairs Bureau and give take some of the burden away from some of the all the patrol officers, because they're answering the 911 calls at such a rapid pace. Once we can fill up our ranks and bolster the Community Affairs Bureau and bolster patrol so that they're not running around from call to call nonstop, that's the ultimate goal. And I think that's a problem that we've seen across the entire country, quite frankly. Most police departments, especially mid to large size police departments, have a personnel shortage right now, and recruiting candidates that can actually make it all the way through the process is incredibly difficult right now. I'll just say one more thing and I'll let you go, because I know that we have a time crunch. When most of us on this call, police officers, took the exams to get hired, there were anywhere from 2,500 to 4,000 people that would show up to take the exam, and maybe 50 to 100 people would get hired out of that group. In the last decade, those numbers have continuously dropped down to where the last 2 years we had under 600 people sign up to take the exam, and we're trying to get qualified candidates to take the jobs, and all the other agencies in the area are doing the same exact thing. So ultimately, if we can get our numbers back up to where they need to be, absolutely, getting boots on the ground and actually interacting with folks all the time and not having a time restraint is vastly important for us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you all on law enforcement, RPD. We definitely understand that the staffing is an issue, as we on City Council will have those decisions to make. as long as as well as the mayor. So thank you very much. With that being said, we have on deck now, we have Wanda Ridgeway. She is the director of Rise Up Rochester. And before I move forward, just to remind you guys, please email me or put in the chat with any additional questions that you may have for Deputy Chief Stith, and I'll make sure I forward it to him and get you the answers back. So without further ado, I have Wanda. Are you here? I thought I saw her face.
I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, I'll mute so I can put you there. Okay.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Wanda Ridgeway. I am the Executive Director of Rise Up Rochester, which is a non-for-profit in the city of Rochester that empowers our community to establish and maintain a nonviolent culture. We're currently located in the Monroe County's Crime Victims Resource Building at 244 South Plymouth Avenue. Some of the things that we do over at Rise Up Rochester, we started a new project this year where we provide the wraparound services for all victims of violence, trying to make sure we be there to help those families without the barriers they have experienced in the past, and just to be there to support them through, with relocation, safe housing, food, clothing, whatever their need may be at that time. Been seeing a lot of families, unfortunately, that have to be relocated or placed in safe housing. It's becoming a big issue in the city, and been a little devastated, So, and what else we do? So we do also have served community engagement to reduce re-victimization, where we work with other community partners. We sit down, we come to the table and try to put our heads together and maybe work on a difficult case that we may have and try to bring those resources to that, that individual or that family. Not an easy job, but we have been seeing, once we come together and we sit at that table, we were meeting on Mondays at 4, we switched it to Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the Monroe County's Crime Victim Building. We have agencies as Healthy Baby Network, Pathways to Peace, SNUG. The Rochester City School District sits at the table, the NAACP sits at that table. We're trying to build support for those families, additional supports, not even only for those families, for the community, so they can understand the work that we're doing. And, we're in this together. Violence, as we all know, is bigger than one organization. We all have to work together to try to come up with a way to, we got to come up with a way to try to end this, this madness. We're on a homicide response team where we respond to the homicides. I'm on the city's homicide response team. We respond and we act as the liaison between the police, the families at the hospitals. Those things can be really difficult, and it's important to have somebody that they can have. I'm sorry, guys. It's important to have someone that can respond to those scenes and be there for those families and help those families to understand what's going on or what the process is going to be when they respond to those homicides, when we respond to, while they're at the homicide scenes. I'm sorry, guys. I'm on a Zoom call, I'm sorry. We have our outreach team where we have a Safe Summer initiative where we go out into the streets and we walk in different neighborhoods that's been impacted by, violence or shootings or homicides. Go out, pass out resources. It's funny that you mentioned a couple of years ago, we did do the community outreach with our former police chief. And it was what the community wanted. Each year we try to get feedback of, how they feel about certain things. And one of the things that they wanted was for they enjoyed seeing community organizations and expressing their concerns right then and there. So we have our support group as well. We have a support group for families of homicide victims, which meets twice a month. On the second Tuesday and the fourth Friday of the month at 6 p.m. at the Monroe County Crime Victims Building. So we do it all. We're in the schools. We teach kids how to take an active stand against violence, how to deal with conflicts, and we have them to enter our Stop the Violence billboard contest, which you could still see a few of our billboards around the city. So Rise Up Rochester, we are truly committed to doing this work. We are committed to saving lives, working with whomever that's willing and has the willpower to do it. It's a very difficult work, but we're getting it done. We're getting it done, not alone. And like I said, we work real close. We partner with Pathways to Peace, Rock to Peace, Snug, and many other organizations that help out. So.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Ridgeway? I see Assemblyman Meeks.
Good evening, Wanda. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the work you're doing in the community. I have a question. One of the things I'm proposing as far as legislation is conflict resolution for grades K through 12. And I believe that it looks different at each level of life. You know, kindergarten, it may be something as simple as we have to share this toy, you know, pass the snack, be friendly. But then when we get to middle school, high school, we start to see even in relationships, abusive relationships and those type of conflicts and beyond. Would you be able to assist or put me in the right direction as it relates to a potential curriculum for conflict resolution, where in us introducing that legislation to the state to be able to say, hey, this organization actually works with and have a curriculum and they could assist in.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We definitely could assist with that. Yes. I would love to. And it's real important. And I'm glad you said even from K-12, because we started at middle school, you know, going into the middle schools, but it's so important to get there at a younger age and to get them to start understanding, you know, at that younger age. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Is there any additional questions? Is that John?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead,
Question.
John.
Thank you. Talk about mental health all day, and then we work to get that part of the curriculum for our kids in school. It's no longer it's a requirement, but I just want to go to this, and I'm gonna be quiet. When I was in North Africa, Morocco, to be more specific, there was officers there that had their assault rifles. Now, I just watched the news. I'm staying home, I'm trying to be safe. So I've seen, you know, on TV, on the news, where some of our officers had assault rifles and they was chasing or doing whatever they were doing. Now, in collaboration of what we said, what we talked about, every neighborhood has something different. Now, I see Mr. Al-Doreen on TV today talking about North violence. So I'm asking, when we're talking about out of the box being big, to the chief, you know, if a neighborhood association or a neighborhood leader is saying, hey, we want that. So it's not only police officers shaking hands over the fence. See, that pistol no longer scares them because they have it too. But when there's somebody else with that long assault rifle ready to take out somebody, this is a different conversation. So I'm wondering if that is too much. Is that too aggressive? to make people feel safe in their neighborhood. I don't know, but that's a thought I'm trying to put out there as we change it, trying to do our violence. And that's all I got. Thank you, Wanda, what you do. And I like your smile.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there any additional questions for Ms. Ridgeway?
Was I on mute? Did you hear me?
No, we misinterpreted. We didn't hear you. Go ahead.
You never heard me?
No, we didn't. Oh, we heard you for that whole spiel after thank you. But were you saying something else?
I wasn't. I talking about those assault rifles.
Yeah,
you
we
heard me?
heard. Yes, we did.
All right, I'm gonna kill everybody. All right, I'm sorry. This is a joke. Relax. Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for having us.
You're welcome. Is there any additional questions for Ms. Ridgeway? Okay. I'll just say thank you so much, Wanda, for your service. We appreciate the time. We already know that you and your staff are very busy 24 hours a day, that you guys are on call. And I know what that's like being a former PIO. So it takes a lot of, time out of your day for that. So thanks for giving us some of your time. If you have any questions for Ms. Ridgeway that we can cover tonight, send it to me in the chat or email it to me and I'll get it to her. And what we'll do is go on to the Rochester Fire Department. Looks like we still have our chief of the fire department on, Chief Hernandez.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, so I'll first talk about National Fire Prevention Week. So the Rochester Fire Department is going to celebrate Fire Prevention Week that takes place October 9th to the 15th. The National Fire Protection Association has announced the theme for this year, which is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. This theme reinforces the importance of developing a home escape plan with all the members of the household and practicing it regularly. With that, the Rochester Fire Department will launch its RFD School Fire Safety Initiative and invite all City of Rochester schools to schedule a fire drill conducted by an RFD fire inspector. Additionally, we're going to invite schools with third graders to schedule a school fire safety presentation based on the theme, My Home Space is a Fire Safe Space. Schools may call anytime during the school year. It doesn't have to be during the week, it could be anytime to schedule a fire drill or a fire safety presentation. At this point, we're going to be sending out letters to each school regarding the fire safety learning opportunity. Within that, some of the messages that we're planning on focusing on within the theme include that the most important thing you can do is to create a home escape plan that will work with everyone in your household. It's important to take into consideration those individuals in your household with sensory or physical disabilities that you need to practice with. Along that, smoke alarms should be installed in every bedroom, outside each sleeping area, and on each level of your home. Ideally, smoke alarms should be interconnected if possible. Basically, when one sounds, they all go off at the same time. When possible, always practice and plan for 2 ways out of each room. And I know safety is a major concern, but we also want to ensure that those windows and doors are going to be able to easily open and have access to if you have to get out. Agree on an outside meeting place, a safe distance from your home in case of event of fire. And lastly, we ask you to put your escape plan into action and conduct home fire drills at least twice a year with everyone in the household, including guests. Both daytime and nighttime. And if you want, you could do it around the same time each year. Obviously, we would recommend practicing things when you change the batteries in your smoke alarms. So any specific questions about fire prevention before I move on to the exam?
Any questions? What you mentioned was very good. I appreciate that, especially since I was a victim of a house fire in 2010. And I promise you, I didn't practice like you recommended, and I wish I had, but I was able to get out safely. I will say that for the high rises, we've had a few of those in the city in the time that I've been an adult, and I don't ever recall it ever being such a prevalent thing when I was younger. Maybe it's because I didn't pay attention, but
Right.
do you have any suggestions for those individuals who live in the towers or high rises?
Yes, I mean, actually, some of those high rises that we've had fire recently, we have conducted fire presentations on a yearly basis. So, you know, those are available for any management personnel. They can always call us and we'll do anything for the, you know, for the residents. But, you know, some of the key things is obviously if you have a situation, keep those doors closed to protect yourself. You know, a lot of times, you know, when you get a fire in the middle of the building, heat and smoke rises up, right? So even though we have a fire on the 7th floor, there's going to be heavy smoke on the 12th and 13th floor if that's the top floor. So a lot of times we'll ask what we refer to as shelter in place. I know that seems scary, but that's actually a lot of time the most safest thing you could do is basically stay inside your apartment, keep the doors closed, windows closed. If you have to, you could put some wet blankets at the main entrance and just wait for us to come and get you. If you have any questions, call 911 and keep us updated of your conditions, especially if you're having some type of medical emergency that we need to get you out. But the main thing in those buildings are to keep the doors closed, especially when you're exiting. I know, unfortunately, I believe it was about 2 years ago, there was a tragic incident that occurred in New York City. And one of the issues there was the fact that the occupant left the door open to, you know, from the apartment door to the hallway, and they left the doors open into the stairwells, which unfortunately caused the heat and smoke to travel. So once again, it's important to have those things shut. If they're not working properly, notify your building management to have those items fixed.
Thank you. We also have a question for from Dr. DeMauro. He has a question in the chat.
Sure.
Thanks. So every year we try in the Southwest, we try to promote the Adopt a Fire Hydrant program. And I'm wondering if the city is going to update their webpage. It looks like, or the fire, or whoever's in charge of that webpage, because I know it hasn't. I think people signed up like 6 or 7 years ago, and they may no longer live in the neighborhood. So it looks like somebody's maintaining a fire hydrant, but they're not.
Okay, I'll look into that. I'll see to make sure that that information is updated on our website. Yep, thank you for that.
There any additional questions for Chief Fernandez? Ms. Reagan, go ahead.
Back to the high rises.
Yes.
In the South Wedge, we have 2 high rises where there's a significant number of seniors and disabled people. And, you know, it seems odd to me that there's, you know, people have on their windows of their house, you know, sticker decals to say, you know, they've got a pet inside. And I'm wondering if there's a process for notifying the RPD when there are disabled people in apartments, so that if you're responding to a high rise, you're aware that there are people who can't run down the stairs and maybe in their apartments.
Right, so normally a lot of those facilities do have a list, an updated list of those residents that will need assistance. So in any type of fire situation, we're gonna work with management to get that information to ensure that you know, we are aware of that. At the end of the day, we are gonna search every apartment, every floor to ensure everyone's out anyways. But once again, a lot of management places will have the information for us, and we would definitely review that, you know, during those type of situations. You know, the issue with the decals, you know, yes, it's a good idea, but once again, you know, 3 o'clock in the morning when it's dark and you got smoke all over, it's going to be hard for us, you know, to see from the outside, depending on the area. So once again, it's just good to make sure that information is being kept up to date. And, you know, once again, you know, in any type of fire situation, we will search every single room, even in a high rise, to make sure everyone's out.
Okay, is there any additional questions for Chief Hernandez? Okay.
And then for that, did you want me to talk about the exam next?
Yep, absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay, and then lastly, the second part is we're actually recruiting right now for the next firefighter exam. I do have some good news. We are extending the deadline and the exam date to allow more individuals to sign up. So I was very happy about that. So right now, the new deadline to sign up for the exam is December 16th, and the new exam date is going to be January 14th. The purpose of that is, once again, to allow as much individuals as possible to sign up for the exam to take advantage. Historically, we do an exam every 4 years. We were planning on doing it every 2 years, then COVID hit, so we're back to 4 years again. So we're going to just take this opportunity to maximize and ensure that we give as many candidates as possible. You know, as the police mentioned earlier, the difficulties of recruiting. So we definitely want to maximize this opportunity to get candidates to become future Rochester firefighters. So once again, December 16th deadline, exam January 14th. If you have any information, you want to look things up, you can go to our website, www.cityofrochester.gov/firefighter job, and we'll have all the information updated in our website.
Chief Hernandez, can you put that in the chat, please? For individuals.
Yes, I'll put it in the chat. Yes, I
Thank
will.
you.
Yep.
Followed by a question from Affiliate Meeks.
Sure.
Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Good, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I have a question. As it relates to the recruiting process, I remember years ago a good buddy, upstanding gentleman in the Rochester community who had worked for Xerox for probably, I don't know, 15 years or so, and also was known for like doing some of the semi-pro football or what have you. And he applied for the fire department, went through the backgrounds piece, and they asked the question. He was responsible for driving trucks for Xerox. Like, have you ever taken anything, you know, from work? And, you know, and he said, well, you know, from time to time, I may, you know, take a pen and a notepad that I keep notes on. But I mean, that's the gist of it. So he was basically disqualified from the process. And they stated that based upon the amount of pens and tablets that he'd taken and the amount of years that he worked there, they take it that he may have stolen upwards of $10,000 worth of supplies from the company. And he was disqualified from the process of Rochester Fire Department. So what things do we have in place now to push back against those type of judgments of sorts that take, you know, credible individuals out of the process?
Right. So, I mean, you know, that's something that we definitely looked into. I know our background packages process, we did look into it, and we have made adjustments, you know, the last couple of years in regards to the time frame of how far we go back in regards to checking for residency. So we have made some adjustments. We're also currently changing the marijuana situation to allow the fairness of the new rules. So that's something that we just passed to ensure that no one's being disqualified based on those situations. We do have a process in place. Basically, the way it works is there is what we refer to as a recommendation fire committee, which is 3 individuals. And then they'll review the information, right? And if someone gets disqualified from that group, there is a second process. You do have the ability to go back and petition against the Civil Service Commission to be reinstated. And I will say, you know, and I've been part of the Rochester Fire Recommendation Committee. I have been part of it. I don't recall the situation you referred to, so it could have been before I was doing it. But the Civil Service Commission, I feel comfortable saying they are very fair. And I think if you explain yourself of what happened, I think they will take into consideration. My recommendation would be is, I don't know if people take advantage of that opportunity, you know? Even the person you're referring to, I don't know if he went to the Civil Service Commission about that. So if one thing I would say here is, if you're aware of someone that got disqualified, no matter what, I would highly recommend that they follow up with HR and they go to that Civil Service Commission meeting to plead their case for a fair opportunity to have that turnover. And that would be my recommendation for anyone that has the opportunity. We want everyone to be fair and have an opportunity for, you know, a second chance, and that's something I will recommend. And I would say that's the issue we have, is many people don't take advantage of that opportunity.
Okay. And what's the name of the Civil Service what?
Commission. Civil
Okay,
Service Commission, yep. And if they want, they could contact the HR department and they'll have that information for their, in regards to how that process works. Part of it is make sure that they have their address information update, because you'll probably get a letter talking about your disqualification, but it's going to give you the information on how you could go to the Civil Service Commission to challenge your disqualification.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to add that I have seen a few of the candidates go through that process, and that process does work even before you guys made some of the changes that you're just talking about. I've actually participated in writing recommendation letters for a couple individuals who are now, I'm proud to say that they are firefighters, and they are still serving in their role as a firefighter, and they have not broken rank, or they haven't been demoted or anything like that. So they've been good candidates, solid candidates. Is there any additional questions for Chief? Well, thank you. Everybody, it's 7:26. Thank you so much for your time today, everyone who's on here. Thank you to all the city administration officials here that are giving of themselves, as well as our colleagues in government. At least I try to host this meeting 4 times a year, fall, winter, spring, and summer. But as anything else, there are times where we may have to meet outside of that particular schedule. So I'll make sure I keep everyone posted for the next one. Again, thank you for your time this evening, and that will conclude our meeting for this evening.
All right. Thank you, LaShay, for organizing.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Goodbye.